Good morning, everybody. We'll get things started here in just a second. Hey, Arna, how's it going?
Yeah, going good. Good news on Joby over the last few days, I guess.
Yeah, some positive updates, I think, and just some things happening in the background, despite some of the noise and other things in the headlines, or Reddit threads, or some of the other things. So excited to dig in, especially on flight testing in Dubai. I think some tangible updates there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, fantastic to see the pictures you posted out of Dubai. So you want to head kick off right away?
Yeah, sure. Just in terms of Dubai there and the updates, I think it was pretty cool that we got a pretty detailed update from the Skyports team with Daniel O'Neill from them a few weeks back earlier in March, and had a chance for my brother took some pictures when he was in Dubai. Just recently posted there, but it's great to see the site is not only working 24/7 as we had talked about, but some people may have not truly appreciated. But then also the site has a lot more rebar, a lot of construction staff on the site, even at midnight. As well as seeing, and midnight meaning time, not a reference to anything else in the eVTOL space, but then also even some of the concrete pillars that from the blueprints look to be on the side where of the structure where the aircraft will actually be landing have started to go up. So seeing those erected within a month, the site really start to transform, I think we'll be in great shape to hit the end of the year. Seeing what I saw when I was in Dubai and how quickly they can put resources towards building things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been waiting and covering this topic now for 2.5 years. So sometimes does feel like having to endlessly wait, but now we seem to be in the final quarter of the go-to market with Dubai.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, as all the other markets as well, we can use existing infrastructure at airports to service the initial launch and operations. But having outside of maybe something that's been built in China, this would be the first eVTOL specific vertiport in the world that I'm familiar, and certainly the largest project. So once we get that open, I think things will really be off to the races in terms of just the investment side from Dubai and the Emirates at large. Once they start putting the money behind these other vertiports, hopefully we'll see one obviously in the Palm and Marina areas. But I'm really excited about having the action between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. When I was there, a lot of people spoke about that route. Drive time a little over an hour, but flight time, you'll cut that down substantially. And that could be, quite a bit of business travel be involved with that, but also just visitors. So exciting stuff out of Dubai, as you said, a couple of years in the making. It's certainly tested our patience, but the end of this year, early next year does seem not only feasible but likely, at least explicitly here on the infrastructure side. So
I mean, time saving is an absolute no-brainer. If you look at the route from the Palm Jamal to La Marina, it will take about 6-8 minutes with the Joby. And when you have kind of traffic jam, it could take 1 hour, up to 1 hour with the car. So definitely a big time saver. And I've seen the first post today on Instagram from a local guy out of Dubai, and he was talking about $95. I don't know where he didn't provide a link, but at least it's good to see that pricing wise there is some kind of activity going on. So let's hope to see when that's actually going to be available in terms of making reservations and booking your ticket.
yeah, it was great to see you share that post, and interesting on the price point side. I think the cool part is that if it's starting to become on the radar there of local residents and people think of it less of, a gimmick or kind of a one-time thing, but potentially into how they commute in and around the Emirates and in particular Dubai. That would be really exciting. And if it is under 100 USD, then, I think it's not too bold of a claim to say that Joby will have zero issues with demand. If it's that, well priced, I think that we almost have unlimited demand for quite the foreseeable future. And then it will just be like we've talked about many times, how many of these aircraft can they manufacture, and how quickly? Because TC is the main focus now, and obviously that's an extremely uphill battle, as Lilium and some of the other ones have, other manufacturers have learned. But with Joby in the final stretches of TC, I think obviously manufacturing is going to be the next big thing, and Joby's been putting out some videos with some hints towards that with their progress in Marina. So I don't know, maybe we could touch on the TC side of things and some of these flight tests that we've seen. Any other?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
before we jump into that one, you just mentioned it is a tough race. If you look at the fatalities with Wisk in the US, Vertical Aerospace in UK are being close to bankrupt. Volocopter was just sold off in Germany to a Chinese car manufacturer, and Lilium out of Munich in Germany also already filed for administration. So there's quite a lot of collateral damage, and it's not so straightforward of crossing the finishing line, let alone being in the lead of crossing the finishing line. So great to see Joby in the lead there. And coming back to the flight testing, what have you got for us? What's the update on flight testing?
Yeah, so the first thing that I wanted to touch base, and I just posted something a few minutes ago, but there's some people out there in the space that are, and it's not just trying to focus on the competition, but this is real things, building real planes. This is a real process that isn't just going to be solved with headlines and PR. But Joby is the only real American company that's publicly traded outside of Beta Aircraft. They do a lot of good work, but in terms of the publicly traded companies, Joby's the only one with a legitimate flight testing regime going on currently, and potentially up until this point at all. Joby has 5 aircraft in the fleet that are flying, or still competing flight tests. But moreover, what we've seen just in the last few weeks is November 541 Juliet X-ray, and then also 542 Juliet X-ray that was just delivered as the second aircraft at Edwards, are both testing, both currently, but then in particular some very specific flight patterns and tests that are really exciting. Posted something the other day of where you can see a couple 20-minute flights, but that where Joby is testing, to a pretty strong degree, more than I've seen in any previous flight test. And I've been looking for several years at almost every single test, within some of the research that we have, where they're really stressing the aircraft, putting it in and out of hover and into wingboard flight. And they had posted a video talking about how instrumental their transition flight and abilities are. And I would just let anybody listening here, anybody that you need to share about Joby information with, is to watch that video and that post, because what you can see is not only is the aircraft beautiful and actually flying around, and it's multiple aircraft, again, something that nobody else can say, but how smooth the aircraft is through transition. And you can physically watch, the aircraft's not bouncing around in the air, very smooth and very in control. So very excited about what these flight tests are showing. And, again, these are not highlights. This is not, what we think the aircraft can do or what someone tells us it can do. You can literally just watch these things on FlightAware or ADS-B, and realize, how robust and strong this flight test program is. Don't be fooled by the others that are talking about having more aircraft deliveries, et cetera, et cetera. No one else has as many planes as Joby in the States.
But being devil's advocate here, Travis, there were some comments earlier in the week about wash, so the turbulence that the aircraft does create, and that could limit the use on existing helipad infrastructure in the US. So what's your take on that one?
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I think, rotor wash. So rotor wash is the air that is being pushed directly underneath the aircraft as it takes off and lands, and then the outwash, which is the air once it hits the ground and that moves away from the aircraft. I think Joby has already done significant testing with NASA on the subject as far back as last year. And some of the things, and that testing was done specifically at Marina, and Joby did share some content about it. So I'm less concerned on that side of things. Joby has spent a lot of time at the very beginning of the R&D of this entire company and project around making the aircraft quiet with how the propeller blades are designed, but also a lot of that is surely going to have taken into account the rotor wash and outwash. So Joby's team and the engineering team has been extremely detailed with this aircraft to make it, not just fly, but acceptable to be used in many different areas, locales, countries. So I'm not overly concerned about the rotor wash and outwash. Some of the things I had seen mentioned hurricane force winds from some estimates from some other manufacturers in the space. Having personally seen a Joby aircraft take off about 50 meters from me, I did not get swept away in a hurricane. So I'm not too worried, and hopefully I think Joby will surprise to the upside there.
Yeah, I remember with the Airbus H125 that was used on the Greenland expedition that I was able to join in 2022, where they would come in at full speed because every minute would cost like $50 US, and it was an exploration setup, also commercial use. You had to be very careful, and there were dedicated spaces on the ground where you had to then crouch, and nothing was supposed to be flying around in terms of tools and so on in a 300-yard, 100-meter radius. So yes, definitely good at least to have that on the radar. And anything else, Travis, on flight testing that you could share with us?
Yeah, and just kind of one anecdotal piece that you mentioned there. The other great part about the Joby design, and other eVTOL will have this, but in particular to the downwash and rotor wash, that will only matter right as Joby is landing. Unlike most helicopters, will still have to spin the rotor blades when they land, either because they plan to take off in short order afterwards, but then moreover just to save on fuel, because even as they're spinning on the ground, that chews up quite a bit of fuel. As you mentioned, it can get quite pricey. And so that's something from Joby that's really exciting. When they power up and power down to take off the aircraft, to take off and land the aircraft, that's a very short window of time before they're up and off of the ground. So again, I don't think that this issue will be too extreme. But in terms of flight testing, we continue to rack up the miles. Some of these flights now people are noticing are only 15 and 20 minutes. For me, I think that's very promising that these are Joby walking through the test cards for TIA with FAA. Obviously, the FAA pilots have not, as far as we know, have not been into the aircraft, but Joby has already proved their range in terms of longer flights with November 542 Bravo Juliet over the past several years before that was converted into the hydrogen aircraft. And so, I'm not worried about range. I'm not worried about long distance, but these tests really seem to be very specific and testing things that put the aircraft in, the highest dynamic forces that it'll encounter in all the different flight envelopes. So, yeah, hopefully we get a little bit more from the flight testing updates in terms of the TIA side. I think they might keep it pretty hush-hush because it'll be a big deal, but hopefully we can get a little bit more information, but really excited to see all these aircraft flying.
Okay, yeah. And talking about flying, we also have very good news from the UK with the Virgin Atlantic deal.
Yeah, I mean, this was one, I guess, for people, the broader audience, this was new news, but for those inside the Joby world had seen this information from several months back, that it looked like Joby and Virgin Atlantic were going to have this deal done. And obviously, there's the symbiosis because Delta is a 49% owner of Virgin Atlantic. So obviously, that'll be great to keep that in the family. And also, Delta has confirmed that the exclusive that they have with Joby that covers US and UK will now also have Virgin Atlantic under that umbrella. What I think is really exciting is, personally, I had maybe discounted that the UK and EU were just quite a bit behind. Obviously, they're some of the eVTOL manufacturers that failed were all European. And so it seemed like there were some challenges there, and other things just geopolitical happening in Europe. But it was really great to see that the UK CAA, their version of the FAA, had leaned in on this. And there's also another manufacturer who actually is based on the Toyota facilities in Japan that's being developed that also has a lot of progress. So I think that UK, from the regulatory standpoint, might actually surprise to the upside and be something that comes to fruition sooner than later. I would have probably put Europe and UK as the last of all the countries that we know about, between UAE, US, South Korea, Japan. But that might sneak up. And if that happens, I think that would be really exciting for Joby. And then moreover, Virgin Atlantic is servicing intercontinental flights between countries, but also moreover, that's the luxury segment for them. So again, the customers who can afford the price point to use the service that Joby would provide, not just from Heathrow, but also to smaller prefectures throughout the area. So yeah, I don't know. You're actually in Europe, so hopefully you have some further context to it. But I was really excited by to hear that deal finally went through.
Yeah, I mean, it's still not clear about the path to certification in terms of the regulation with the governing body, but yeah, we'll have to see when and that's going to happen. And as you said, for now, Middle East with Dubai definitely being the first to cross the finish line from what we know as of today, and then we'll see with South Korea, with Japan, with the US, which markets are going to follow suit. And talking about Delta Airlines, they've been pretty quiet over the last few months. And hopefully, when is Delta going to become more vocal? And could you just remind us of the original commitment that Delta made in terms of number of passengers that they want to be transporting by 2030 together with Joby?
Sure. Yeah. So the original Delta deal that's currently in place is for up to 200 million. And then thus far, 60 million of that has been actualized, and that was all with equity. There's a few warrants, I believe, involved, but thus far the 60 million was in equity, and those are all under $5 strike price. So just to kind of give us a benchmark of things, and then when we look through the contract itself, some parts of it are redacted, the Joby and Delta contract, but the parts that weren't gave us some insights that I believe was about 1,000 passengers per airport per day was their goal. And so when you start to look at revenue numbers and what Joby's demand will actually look like, from what we've seen, very exciting on the Delta front. And in terms of news or anything new, somebody actually posted in a Reddit group earlier this week that there is an event here in Los Angeles where Joby is going to be displaying, I believe it's the documentary short documentary that they had put together with Delta for Delta's 100 year that they had just celebrated in Vegas at the Sphere. But anyway, Joby is going to be screening that here in Los Angeles in 2 weeks, and I'll be visiting that to get some intel from everybody, see what I can find out and dig up. But hopefully we get some more out of Delta, knowing that the next tranches are probably tied to certification or initial launch of service or announcement of initial launch of service. We might not get anything overly tangible or material until later in the year, but all exciting nonetheless. They haven't backed down from their investment, and they've put more in than just money. Obviously, highlighting Joby within their 100-year celebration at the Sphere just a couple months ago.
Yeah, and for now, Delta is partnering with Joby on focusing on the New York, JFK, LaGuardia airports and Los Angeles, especially in the context of the upcoming Olympics.
Yes, there's some talk here. I know that Archer and Joby are both vying to have aircraft in their fleet that are flying in and around the Olympics in Los Angeles. But also, I think there's some exciting things, as you mentioned, in the New York space. A lot of sports, a lot of events that will also just lend themselves to driving the business. And when people maybe haven't heard of an eVTOL or seen one before, all these markets are going to be great for it. The Olympics, I think there's still maybe some security side of things of how much aircraft will be able to fly around the city at that time. I've already mentioned before I think that might not be a huge revenue driver. Obviously, marketing and eyeballs wise would be beneficial. But yeah, really exciting to see that the Delta's still leaning in, Toyota's still leaning in. These are big backers, important backers. Uber is obviously heavily involved. So where Joby's headed this year, it might be less than what we were hoping. Maybe a few months back in terms of progress or announcement of progress. But I don't think that actually means that they're not making progress. It's just a lot of things are happening behind the scenes as we ramp up and get towards what seemed to be crazy once upon a time, but now is certainly right around the corner in my mind in the next few quarters with the initial operation starting in Dubai. So.
Yeah, and for those already invested in Joby, I mean, we've been going sideways now for the last few weeks, and I think Joby actually held up pretty well with the certain downtrend on the market. And this is going to be very difficult to time because there is going to be a day when certification is announced, and there's going to be a day when regular services are going to take place in Dubai. So if you're standing on the sideline and hoping for a further dip, I don't have a crystal ball, of course. But there will be that day when operations start. So we'll just have to see. But I think it's going to be a surprise, and it's going to be announced, and then that's it. We're off to the races. And just talking about the Delta corporation that you mentioned, yes, it's only LA, New York for the time being. But the overall game for Delta, of course, is that they are currently servicing around 125, 128 airports in the US. And of course, in full scale with eVTOL partner Joby, they could service up to 13, 14,000 vertiports, small helipads, small landing strips, small airports, rural airports across the US. So that's quite a number from 123, 125 to then eventually a huge greater 10,000 number, which of course makes it very interesting for the total addressable market. But of course, that's going to happen further down the road. And no one knows how quickly this is going to scale in terms of scaling production. We've seen it with Tesla. We mentioned that several times on how difficult it is to scale production, but also they have Toyota as a partner, which could hopefully help them to scale very quickly. But production is one side of the coin, and then you have the infrastructure that you need. You have the crew. You need to have maintenance. You have to have the pilots. So there's quite a lot coming together, and yeah, we'll still have to wait in idle mode for the time being. Be patient, calm, collected, and wait until we are off to the races.
Yes, no, I think that's all correct. And one big thing that you touched on, and that I think maybe we can maybe wrap up our conversation here or pull on is the Toyota side in manufacturing. Joby had put out a video just a couple weeks ago that had shown some new footage, but also some footage that gave some insights that wasn't just something that we hadn't seen before, that was showing how in their factory, having walked through it myself, things have definitely changed with not only how things are set up. The factory is more full in Marina, that is, the pilot production line. It's more full, more robust in terms of the different stations that they have, but also how everything is marked out, how there is now individual stations, but multiple of those individual stations. Gives us a little bit of insight into some of that Toyota Kaizen mentality about the continuous improvements. And there was a couple of screenshots that you could see in those videos where Joby has racks and racks filled with forms that are under, like in vacuum, that are under pressure, that are being set up now, but in larger scale, where Joby is really starting to crank out parts, I think way more than they need just to make it their individual aircraft at this point, which tells me that they're getting very far within the manufacturing side, being Babylon, I think.
Yeah. So Travis,
there you go. Hope everybody can hear me, but yeah, just to continue there on the Toyota side and Marina, there's some really exciting progress that they've made there in terms of rapidly, building more and more parts. it was mentioned by Didier and in their recent shareholder letter from Q4 2024 that I believe is 90% of the composite parts are now conforming, and that's going to start to roll through the rest of the electronics. So very excited to see that progress, and hopefully we'll get a little bit more out of the Marina factory and the Toyota partnership here as the year rolls on. Arne, anything else to highlight
Travis,
there?
when are you going to attend the event in Los Angeles to provide us with more insights and updates?
Yeah, great. So that's on April 3rd. So that's next Thursday. That will be there, and we'll try and get everybody connected. May even, do a little spaces afterwards or the following day, just to give people, as close to real-time updates as possible.
Okay, cool stuff. Then thanks again. Great updates, and everyone, good luck in staying long like us on Joby, and hope to see many of you end of the year, hopefully in Dubai when this go-to-market is going to happen and we're off to the races.
Yes, thanks everybody for tuning in, and of course, hit us up if you have any questions. Obviously, I love to talk about Joby, but keep things realistic, as Arne said. And this thing is going to be slow until it's going very, very fast in terms of from the stock price. So be smart, stay safe out there, and looking forward to some updates for everybody here next week.
Take care. Ciao, ciao. Bye bye.
Thanks everybody.